In this video, I'm going to go through taking the bar stool drawing that we've been working on and assembling in the last few tutorials. I'm going to go through how we can make a comprehensive set of plans for that bar stool and all of its individual components, which can then be used in the workshop for construction of that stool. So the first thing I'm going to go through is how you can access this file and get a copy of it. So I've made it public. So it's here as one of my last open documents. If on Onshape you click down the left hand side on public, you can then search up the top for any files that have been made public by other Onshape users. So my one is called barstool write, W-R-I-G-H-T. If you hit enter, it's the only one that's coming up for me. So if you then double click on this particular file, you can then make a copy of it, all right, which will come up along the top here, and you will then be able to follow along and complete these plans along with me. So I'm just very quickly going to make an actual copy of this file so that the plans don't show up on the public file. All right, so I'm now working in the copy of this particular Onshape file. You can see up the top here with the name, it's barstool write copy. Now, to make a set of plans, just like what we've been doing with adding part studios, assemblies, those sorts of things, down in the bottom left-hand corner, we're going to click on our plus, and we're going to create a drawing. So just below part studio, assembly, variable studio, we're going to create a drawing. It's then going to come up with this menu that has a number of options. So it's going to come up with what you last used if you have done one of these before. I like to just go the ISO, and generally I'll do a set of A4 plans because they're nice and easy to print at most printers. If they're not all showing up, you click on that show Onshape templates and you're going to get a few different options. So A0 through to A4 and A4 portrait. We're just going to select the normal ISO underscore A4. Then we're going to click OK. So it's going to pop up like this, and the first thing it's going to want us to do is insert something. So this is the default. We've already got insert view selected. On the first page of the plans, because it's got this really large title block in the bottom right hand corner, I generally just like to insert the assembly, and I like to, on the view menu up in the top left hand corner, I like to select the isometric view, which is just our three-dimensional view of that stool. Now I then pick a scale that takes up as much of the page as possible without it overhanging the border. So again, on my insert view on the left hand side here, I've got view scale. It's currently 1 to 16. Let's go down to 1 to 6. I reckon that's probably as big as we're going to get it. I can try 1 to 5. That might be a bit too big to fit. Yep, so that's just too big. So we'll go back, we'll click 1 to 6 and we'll stick with that. All right, and I'm just going to put it in the center of the page, just like that. Now, the other thing I like to do on this particular page is sometimes I will label my key design features or my key joinery. Now, it's really simple to do just by selecting our note tool. So I select the big capital A, that's our note tool, and then I can go and pick a point on the drawing. So let's say, for example, if I zoom in with my scroll, okay, I could click on this particular point here. I could zoom back out, draw an arrow out, and I know that these are going to be mortise and tenon joints. So I could just label those. When I'm happy with the label, hit the tick. I could also label on the top here that I'm going to do some domino widening joints to create that top. All right, I might also note the lightly tapered legs just as a design feature, and could even note the curved rails. So I've just gone in, I've just added a couple of key bits of joinery, some key design features, just to fill out the drawing a little more. From there, I'm then going to deselect my note tool, and I can start filling out my title block. So if I zoom in by scrolling in, I've got my title. So I'm going to double click, and that will allow me to type. I can start typing in, and you'll see that the little dashes don't go away when I start typing in. I actually have to backspace them to get rid of them first, and then I can type in. So I'm going to just label this as bar stool, tick, saying that it's A4, the scale's automatically put in, all right, and it's currently showing sheet 1 of 1. It automatically should come up with your name as who's drawn it. In this case, it's possible that it's going to come up with my name because it's my original file, but because you've made a copy of it, it should come up with your name. We're not going to worry about signature or adding anything else in here. I'm just going to put a note in the material by double clicking. I'm going to put radiata pine as my material, tick, and for my finish, I'm just going to put hard wax. Okay, so depending on what the project is, you might want to label it with a different material, different finish. I'm just showing you how we can go about changing this information to add a bit more to the set of plans. Sorry. I'm now going to zoom out. So that's the first page of my sheet. We can now add some more pages to this set of plans, all right, or new sheets. So over on the left-hand side, we've got in the center of that left-hand bar, we have the sheets list. Okay, and you can see we've got sheet 1, and then it's showing me what has been included on sheet 1. Up in the top right-hand corner of this sheets pop-up, we can insert another sheet. Okay, we can also label each of these. All right, so if I wanted to right-click on the first one, I could rename it and call that isometric drawing, for example, and hit the tick. All right, my second one that I'm now in, okay, we don't need the menu up. My second one that I'm in, I'm now going to do a orthographic projection, so a top, front, and side view of the bar stool that I can then add all of the key dimensions for the bar stool as a whole. So to do that, just like we did with the first one, we're going to use our Insert View tool. All right, we've already got it set as the assembly. We could click on the Insert menu and we could go and insert individual parts or the assembly, which is going to be relevant in a minute. So I'm going to stick with the assembly. And we're going to start with the front view, which is the default. And we're going to come back and change this scale. Actually, we might do it quickly now while we can still see. So 1 to 5 is way too big because we still need to put a top view above it. So let's try 1 to 6. 1 to 6 might be pushing it a little bit. Let's go with 1 to 8, just so we've got a bit more room for dimensions. We want to leave a decent amount of room around the outsides of this so that we can very clearly dimension all of the different views. So I'm going to click and put that view on the page. It then automatically goes into this projected view tool. The projected view tool allows you to then slide off to the side, and it's going to give me a side view. I can click to place that. While I'm still in that projected view tool, you can see it's still selected. I can click on that one, right, and I can go down below it, and that is giving me the top view. If I put it above it, okay, you can see that's the bottom view. Now I want the top view, so I'm going to put top view just there. and I'm going to deselect the projected view tool. Okay, because this is a perfectly symmetrical chair, the front view and the side view are exactly the same. Okay, so we're not going to have to do too many dimensions on this. Depending on the design of your project, your stool or chair or table is probably not going to be as symmetrical as this, so you can add some more dimensions. You've just got to add all of the relevant dimensions so that when you use this as a workshop drawing, you've got all the key information that you need. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay this out how I want it to look. I want the top view to be above the front view, and you'll see now when I click and drag the front view, the other views are automatically going to line up with it. Okay, so any dimensions I do on one, they're perfectly aligned with the other. When I go to print this set of plans, everything is printed to scale. So if I forget something, it's very easy for me to get a ruler out, make a measurement, times that measurement by 8 for my 1:8 scale, and that will be the actual measurement of that component for that project. So once I've got these placed, it's now time to do some dimensioning. Before I do any dimensioning, I'm going to change some of the settings for the dimensions just to make them look a bit nicer. I'll very quickly put a dimension on just to show you why I do this change. So for example, if I wanted the dimension of this leg, I can select my dimension tool, which is D as a shortcut on the keyboard. Then I can go and click on a particular line on the drawing. Okay, and I can put that dimension there. Now I know that these legs are actually 700 high. So if I zoom in, you'll see the reason it's only coming up as 697 is I've got that 3mm chamfer. So to fix that, I could deselect my dimension tool, click and delete that dimension. Instead, what I can do when I click the dimension tool, instead of clicking on the line, I can click on that point at the top there, zoom out, zoom in, click on the bottommost point of the leg. You'll see I've got 3mm there because that's what the chamfer is. But if I then drag out to the side, all right, it gives me the 700mm height. Now you'll notice once you place the dimension, those lines are coming straight off the project itself, not at the bottom there because of the chamfer. If there was no chamfer there, it would be straight off the project. But up the top here with the tabletop, it's actually touching, or the seat top I should say, it's actually touching the seat top, so there's no gap. The measurement is also running parallel to the dimension line that's there. Okay, I'm not a big fan of how that looks. I prefer it if all the dimensions are horizontal. So I'm going to show you how we can make that change and how we can get a little bit more gap between the actual drawing itself and these lines that give us our dimensions. So on the right hand side, we've got this little spanner looking tool. That's our drawing properties. We're going to click on that and it's going to come up with a whole heap of settings that we can change. Now the first thing I like to change is our decimal separator. So if you had a measurement of 20.5mm, it's not going to come up as 0.5, it's going to come up as 20,5. So I always change that to a period, so it comes up with a dot instead. Then if we go along the top menu, we go to dimensions. You can change the font that the dimensions come in, you can change the size of the arrowheads, all sorts of things. We're not going to worry about any of those. Text alignment, it says align with dimension line. You can change that so that they are all horizontal. So if you watch that 700mm dimension, when I click this, it will turn to be horizontal. Just like that. Now, the line is now pretty much touching that 700. There's not much of a gap there, and we don't have a lot of gap up here. That's what these gaps below are. So currently the text gap is 0.62mm. That's between the line and the actual number. So I'm going to change that to 3mm, and you can see it's now out a little bit further. Geometry gap, that's the gap from the line up the top here. So the point that I chose to where the line starts, it's currently 0.62. I'm going to change that. Let's do 5 to start with. Okay, so 5mm is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I can probably get away with a little bit less. Let's go to 3. Yeah, so let's stick with 3. So now there's a clear gap, just enough so that I can see that it's not actually attached to my drawing. Okay, now depending on where you put your dimensions, you may need to make that bigger or smaller. Play around with it and see what works for you. The last one is the extension past the line. That is how far past the arrowhead the line goes. So if I change that to 3 as well, you can see the line goes a little bit further past. Okay, so the aesthetics of this are really completely up to you. All right, you don't have to change all of these, but depending on how you want your drawing to look, there's some just little settings that you can change to make things look a little bit more professional, a little neater, and a little easier to distinguish between what are dimension lines and what are lines on the actual project. So to close that menu, we can just hit that spanner again, and it takes us back. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and use my dimension tool to add in the rest of the dimensions that I want. So I need to know the gap between the legs is 200. Okay, the other dimension I might like to know is all of my key dimensions for this taper that I've got here. So I know that it's 150.21. Now, it's quite possible that's because of the chamfer as well. So let's see if I get rid of that, because I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be 150. Let's see if I just selected the wrong point. Yeah, so there we go. I've just selected the wrong point. So 150. Okay. I might also want the distance from there to there, which was my other distance that I had. So I find with some of these smaller measurements, the numbers look a bit funny if you leave them in the center. You can just put them off to the side. Okay. On the other side, I'm going to do the overall dimension of the leg. Clicking on those 2 points. All right, again, put that 42 there. Okay. Now, if I didn't want to put all of these dimensions on this one drawing, I could put some more over here. All right, so for example, I might want to put distance from here to where the taper begins, which is there. So I know that that's 550. I might want to put the outer dimension of the top. Okay, I could also try and put some of the dimensions. I should be able to, yep, so I can see 75 into there. Okay, I'm starting to get a little bit technical with how many dimensions I'm putting on this. I don't want to overpopulate this drawing. I'm going to do a few more pages to show some of the details of the rails and the legs, because this drawing, the main thing it's showing is all of our key measurements for our original cuts. So we need to cut all our legs to 700. Okay, our rails are not going to be cut to 200 because of the mortise and tenons. We're actually going to have to cut them longer to allow for the tenons, which we'll see in the next lot of drawings. But we're also going to need to see things like the mortise locations. So those can't be seen on this drawing. So I'm actually going to get out of my dimension tool. I'm going to get rid of some of these and just try and stick with our key measurements. All right, which for me is just what are the dimensions of my top. Okay, I might put in a dimension for how much overhang we have. Okay, so a 10mm overhang. I've got the overall height of the legs. I might also want to put in the overall thickness of the top. being 19. Okay, but overall, they are all of the key measurements that I need. I don't need anything else really on this drawing. So I'm going to deselect my dimension tool. I'm just going to label this. Again, just going to call it bar stool. Right. It's got 1 to 8 as the scale. I'm just going to confirm by double clicking, and yep, it is 1 to 8, so that is correct. If for some reason that scale is incorrect, you can double click on it and you can override it and you can type it in for yourself. Okay, but it should just match whatever you've done for your key drawings. So now it's time to add another sheet. So I'm going to insert another sheet. I need to insert a view. This time I'm not going to insert the assembly. I want to click on the insert button and I'm going to do the legs first. So I'm actually going to insert, and I want the front view of the leg. And again, I'm going to try and make it as big as I can. All right, I'm going to put it off to one side because I'm going to show you how we can use our detail tool to zoom in on some of the key details of this. So I'm going to pop it just there. I'm going to deselect the projected view because I just want this one view for now. So to start with, let's have a look at our detail view. So right here, it's this circle with the A and the little picture in it. That allows us to, we can use all different shapes. We're just going to stick with the circle. We can click and drag, all right, a circle. Okay, and it gives us a detail view. Now, I should be able to move this, yep, just like this, by double clicking on it and then dragging it. Oh, I don't know what it's done to me there. Let's just close it. Just move it down there, hit the tick. All right, so there we go. So we've double clicked on it, we've dragged it, we've moved it to show what we want. So rather than me trying to do tiny little dimensions down here, I can now do a much larger view. If I double click on this, I can actually change the scale. So I could call it 1 to 3. Let's go 1 to 1, bit too big. It's 1 to 2. So I can make it a pretty decent size. All right, whole heap of options. 2 to 1's way too big. Right, so you can scroll through, you can manually enter. So let's say if I wanted it to be 2 to 3, you can have a play around with making it all different sizes in terms of the scale. I think 2 to 3 there is a pretty good size, so I'm going to now tick that, and I can click and drag this and I can move it just like I can move this. So I've got my detail view showing a blown up version of it, and I can now dimension this. So using my same dimension tool, I can add in the height and width of my mortise. I can check what the offset is. Okay, and same with there to there. Alright, so I've added in all of my details for my mortise. I know it's a 6mm wide mortise, it's 30mm tall, set 10mm down from the top, okay, and 11.5mm in from the outside edge. Alright, I could then also do some dimensions, those ones I was talking about for my taper. So I put that 150 in, and I can put in the 18mm that I had here. Alright, so I'm just adding in some details. It'll be exactly the same process when you go to do a detail view for your rails. So I'm not going to go through completing it for the rail. Alright, I want you to have a go at using the same principles that I've just showed here to put in some details that you need for the rail. And that's pretty much it on making our set of plans.